Bibliographic information of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Bibliographic information. Collated Perfect contains 1. L. Report from the Office of Indian Affairs, November 24, 1827, pages 144 through 149, and Folding Table B. 2. M. Military Expeditions Against the Indians, pages 150 through 163. 3. Indian Affairs, 1827, pages 177 through 202. Annual Report of the Superintendent of Indian Affairs transmitted with the message of the President to the opening of the first session of the 20th Congress, 1827 through 28. Washington, printed by Duff Green, 1827. Excerpt from Document Number 1 of the Senate, Message from the President, etc., December 4, 1827, 20th Congress, First Session, followed by the two other reports described on the preceding flyleaf. The same reports are also printed as pages 140 through 196 of Document Number 2 of the House of Representatives, Message from the President, etc., December 4, 1827, same Congress in session, but with imprint Washington, printed by Gales and Seaton, 1827. End of bibliographic information. Read by Step Heather, Bangalore, India, March 19, 2023.
Section 1 of Annual Report for the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report from the Office of Indian Affairs by Samuel S. Hamilton. Department of War, Office of Indian Affairs, November 24th, 1827. Sir, I had the honor, in the absence of Colonel McKinney, in compliance in part with the order of the Department of the 10th of September last, to lay before you on the 29th ultimo an estimate of the amount which will be required to be appropriated for the current expenses of the Indian Department for the year of 1828, to wit, $181,224, being the same amount as was required by estimate for the year 1827, but for which an appropriation of $156,100 only was made by Congress, being $25,124 less than the estimate. There is reason to apprehend, notwithstanding the rigid regard which has been had to economy in the disbursements, that in the fulfillment of the treaty obligations for which no specific provision was made, and of those which have necessarily grown out of the hostile conduct of certain Indians on the Mississippi in the course of the year, the expenditures for the same will be found, when all the accounts come to be settled, not to have fallen much short, if anything, of the amount estimated for, and that there will consequently be a deficiency in the appropriation made for 1827 of at least the amount of the estimate for that year which was not provided for by Congress, to wit, $25,124. Should the result be as anticipated, it will in that event be necessary to obtain an appropriation of that amount at the ensuing session of Congress to supply such deficiency. The sum of $181,224, estimated for 1828, is believed to be not a cent more than will be absolutely required for the service of that year. The reasons for this increase in the expenses of the Indian Department are to be found in the new obligations imposed by recent treaties, in the extension of our intercourse with the Indians, in the emigration of the Indians from the states of Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, which has taken place more or less for several years past and continues to go on, and in the conferences which it has become necessary to hold from time to time with various Indian tribes, particularly within the superintendency of General Clark, to preserve peace between them. The expense for these objects has been considerable during the present year, and there is no reason to doubt from present indications of its being equally so for some years to come. In further compliance with the order of the 10th of September last, I now have the honor to submit the accompanying statements, marked A and B. Statement A shows the amount of money disbursed in the Indian Department under the various heads of appropriation for the 3 first quarters of the present year, the amount for which accounts have been rendered, and the amount which remains to be accounted for. The large amount, $309,509.18, which appears to be unaccounted for, arises in some measure from the circumstance of the statement showing the amount of remittances to the 30th September, while it only shows the amount of accounts rendered to the 1st of that month, they being required to be so rendered annually by the Act of the 6th of May, 1822, amendatory of the Act of 1802, making, of course, a considerable difference, as the remittances made during the month are included in the former, and the disbursements made during the same time omitted in the latter. But the principal reason for this balance is, all the accounts to the 1st September had not come in when the statement was prepared. Since then, accounts have been received from General Clark, which alone reduced the balance to $221,513.31, and it is believed that when those which yet remain to come in, and they are daily expected, are received, the balance which remains to be accounted for will be reduced to a very small amount, probably not more than that which must necessarily result from the difference in the period for which the accounts are rendered and that which the remittances are made up to. There is, in fact, no reason to doubt but that the whole will be faithfully accounted for as soon as all the objects for which the remittances were made are accomplished. Statement B shows the number of Indian schools, the number of teachers to each, and the number of pupils. The amount disbursed for the present year up to the 30th September on account of these schools, from the annual appropriation of $10,000 for the civilization of the Indians, is, as will be seen by reference to the statement A, $8,246.84. The school established at Great Crossings in Kentucky, which is supported by funds appropriated by the Chocktaws, Creeks, and Potawatomies for that purpose, is, by the last report, represented to be progressing with the most flattering success. The number of Indian youths attending it is 100, of which 64 are Choctaws, 25 Creeks, and 11 Potawatomies. The whole number of children now receiving education at the schools, including the one at Great Crossings, is 1,291, being 3 less than there were last year. It is believed, however, when all the annual reports are received, about 1/3 of which being yet due, it will be found that the number of pupils has increased instead of diminished during the year. The commissioners appointed, under a provision made by Congress for that purpose, 20th of May, 1826, to hold a general council with the Indians at Green Bay, have performed that duty, and concluded a treaty with the Chippewa, Menominee, and Winnebago tribes of Indians, which remains to be submitted for the ratification of the President, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate of the United States. The commissioners appointed, under the provision made for the purpose at the last session of Congress, to hold a treaty with the Cherokees, have been engaged in their duties, but no report of the progress or result of their negotiations has yet been received. Several attempts have been made, by order of the Department, during the year through the Indian agent, to obtain from the Creeks, by negotiation, the strip of land yet owned by them within the limits of the state of Georgia, but without success. During the past summer, some outrages of an aggravated character were committed by the Winnebagos on some of our citizens on the Mississippi, and strong indications of a disposition to commit further acts of hostility were manifested by these and other Indians, which for a while excited just apprehensions in our citizens in that quarter for their safety, and interrupted the operations of those engaged in working the lead mines on Fever River. But by the prompt movements of the military, which will, it is presumed, be particularly reported by another branch of the Department, these hostile indications have been entirely suppressed, and the Indians made to atone for their outrages by the surrender for punishment of the principal persons concerned in them. In all other respects, our relations with the Indians have been friendly, and there is good grounds for believing, after the evidence the Indians have had, in the instance just referred to, of the power and will of the government to punish them for acts of violence and outrage wantonly committed against our citizens, that they will continue so. There is reason to fear, however, while the district of country in which the lead mines are situated remains undefined, as it is at present believed to be, and the Indian title to the same not completely extinguished, that the operations of our citizens on the mines will continue to excite the jealousy of the neighboring Indians, and that new disturbances from this cause between them and our citizens may soon arise. The Department, impressed with the importance of removing so serious a source of contention, and from which it is believed the late disturbances chiefly sprung, instructed the commissioners appointed to hold the council with the Indians at Green Bay, in addition to their other duties, to negotiate with the Indians for an entire extinguishment of their title to the mining district. These instructions, it appears, were not received by the commissioners until they had separated, and of course they were not acted upon. A measure of so much importance in securing our citizens in future from interruption in their mining operations, and fixing on a permanent and friendly footing our relations with the Indians, will, no doubt, receive the further consideration and attention of the Department, and such steps be adopted for its accomplishment as it may deem expedient. On that part of the order of the 10th of September, which requires such remarks as it may be thought proper to make in relation to the administration of the Indian Department, I have the honor to state that I am not aware that any measure is required for the improvement of the administration of the Department, unless it be the one heretofore suggested and embraced by a bill which was submitted by the Committee on Indian Affairs to the House of Representatives at the last and preceding sessions of Congress. Such an organization as that bill proposes would no doubt produce the same beneficial results on the administration of this branch of the public service as a similar organization is known to have produced in other branches. All which is respectfully submitted, Samuel S. Hamilton, to the Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of Section 1. Section 2 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Extract from the Statement of the Second Auditor, and recapitulation. Extract from the Statement of the Second Auditor, showing The amount of requisitions issued under the head of appropriation from the 1st day of January, 1827, to the 30th September, the amount of accounts of the respective agents and dispersing officers in whose favor said requisitions were issued, which have been rendered for settlement, and the amount which remains unaccounted for. Indian Department. Requisitioned $101,934.25. Rendered $101,934.25. Pay of Indian agents and superintendent at St. Louis. Requisitioned $40,356.65. Rendered $25,106.65, leaving $15,250 unaccounted for. Pay of sub-agents. Requisitioned $20,461.86. Rendered $9,386.48, leaving $11,075.38. Civilization of Indians. Requisitioned $8,246.84. Rendered $4,400, leaving $3,846.84. Presents to Indians. Requisitioned $14,390.45. Rendered $14,390.45. Annuities. Requisitioned $227,496.63. Rendered $159,364.28, leaving $68,132.35. Purchase of provisions for quapaws. Requisitioned $2,000, leaving $2,000 unaccounted for. Carrying into effect treaties with Osages, Kansas, and Shawnees, per Act 20th May, 1826. Requisitioned $4,550. Rendered $1,060.37, leaving $3,489.63. Running a line dividing Florida from Georgia. Requisitioned $3,745.80. Rendered $3,745.80. To aid the Creeks in their removal west of the Mississippi, per Act 20th May, 1826. Requisitioned $29,080.82. Rendered $2.50, leaving $29,078.32. Act for the Relief of the Florida Indians. Requisitioned $12,750.25. Rendered $12,750.25. Treaty with Chocktaws and Chickasaws, per Act 20th May, 1826. Requisitioned $2,445.37. Rendered $2,445.37. Treaty with the Creeks of 26 January, 1826, per Act of 22 May, 1826. Requisitioned $96,472.51. Rendered $14,081.58, leaving $82,390.93. Proceeds of lands reserved for Choctaw schools under 7th Article of Treaty of 18th October, 1820. Requisitioned $7,104.40. Rendered $833.83, leaving $6,270.57. Rations to Florida Indians. Requisitioned $30,015.96. Rendered $30,015.96. Running the line of the land assigned to the Florida Indians. Requisitioned $330.56. Rendered $330.56. Holding treaties with Cherokees for a canal to connect the Hiwassee and Conesago. Requisitioned $10,000, leaving $10,000 unaccounted for. To carry into effect certain Indian treaties per Act 2nd March, 1827. Requisitioned $147,641.06. Rendered $69,665.90. Leaving $77,975.16. Holding treaties with Indians beyond the Mississippi. Requisitioned $93.05. Rendered $93.05. Recapitulation. Amount of requisitions issued in the first 3 quarters of 1827. $759,116.46. Amount of accounts rendered for settlement during said period, $449,607.28, leaving $309,509.18. Amount for which accounts have been rendered by General Clark, since the statement from which the above abstract is taken was made by the second auditor, to wit, $87,995.87, leaving the sum to be accounted for $221,513.31. End of Section 2.
Section 3 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Hope. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. The Secretary of War to General Gaines, August 3rd, 1827. By James Barbour. Sir, information has been received by this department of several outrages being perpetrated by the Winnebago tribe of Indians, attended with circumstances that make it necessary they should be severely chastised for their insolence and violence. The extent of the combination is, as yet, uncertain. It is, however, sufficiently great, especially having reference to their long-continued hostility in number, to justify and indeed to require that a respectable portion of our force should be carried to the theater of their outrages, the neighborhood of Prairie du Chien, the post itself, having been threatened. We have been advised by Governor Cass that General Atkinson, with great promptness, had prepared to move with a portion of the troops, a regiment and 4 companies, from Jefferson Barracks to Fort Crawford, and it is possible that Colonel Snelling and indeed General Brady, both, may have also united portions of their respective commands for the same objective. I presume that the measures already adopted to protect our citizens and to inflict due chastisement on the offenders will have been successfully carried into effect, and doubt not that they will meet the exigency of the occasion. Let the department be regularly advised of the course of events. I have the honor to be, signed, James Barborough, Major General E.P. Gaines, Cincinnati, Ohio. End of Section 3. Section 4 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Hope. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Major Norse to General E.P. Gaines, September 4th, 1827, by Charles Josephus Norse. Sir, I have the honor, by direction of the Secretary of War, to acknowledge the receipt of your communication of the 16th unit-level training, and in reply to state that he approves of the measures which you have taken to inflict such punishment upon the hostile Winnebagos, as the outrages which they have committed merits, and as will ensure their future good conduct. Funds for the ordinary expenditures of the expedition under General Atkinson have been remitted by the Quartermaster General. The appropriations for that department are, however, too limited to warrant the immediate payment of unexpected drafts to a large amount. In reference to the purchase of horses, which you had provisionally directed, it is hoped, from recent information, that it may not have been found necessary to resort to, but if the purchase has been made, it will be ratified by the department. I have the honor. Signed, C.J. Norse, Chief Clerk, Major General Edmund P. Gaines. End of Section 4. Section 5 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Hope. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. The Secretary of War to General E.P. Gaines, October 9th, 1827, by James Barborough. General, I have been informed unofficially that you had given instructions to General Atkinson to require as the price of pacification with the Winnebagos a surrender of a portion of their territory. Although the fate of war, executed in sternness, may justify this measure, more especially when it has been waged by a whole tribe, as yet the United States have pursued a different policy. They have been governed by a spirit of forbearance and have adopted the humane maxim to spare the weak. If, therefore, these deluded people have given up the murderers of our people, so that they may be brought to condign punishment, the surrender of any portion of their territory may be dispensed with, and peace be restored to them. I have the honor. Signed, James Barborough, General E.P. Gaines. End of Section 5.
Section 6 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Tommy McCoy. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 6. General E.P. Gaines to the Secretary of War, August 16, 1827, by Edmund P. Gaines. General E.P. Gaines to the Secretary of War. Headquarters, Western Department, Cincinnati, Ohio, August 16, 1827. Sir, I have been honored with your letter of the 3rd of the present month in relation to the repeated outrages of the Winnebagos. I am much gratified to find that the measures promptly adopted by General Atkinson on the receipt of Governor Cass's report of those outrages were such as you had anticipated, and such as are likely to be approved by the President of the United States. From the reports of General Atkinson, which have been transmitted to the Adjutant General's office, I find that he had reached Fort Armstrong, Rock Island, on the 23rd of July with 310 men, that Major Ketchum was but a short distance in the rear with 225 men, and that Colonel Snelling, with near 200 men of the 5th Infantry, had arrived at Prairie du Chien, making a total of more than 700 men. This force is deemed sufficient to inflict on the hostile bands of the Winnebagos that chastisement which their insolence demands, and such as will be necessary to ensure their respect and future observance of any treaty of peace between us. I have directed General Atkinson to inflict on them exemplary punishment, but being convinced that he will be unable to pursue or meet them, except at times in places of their own selection, without the aid of mounted men, I have authorized him to obtain, by purchase or otherwise, a sufficient number of horses to mount 2 or 3 of his companies. I respectfully solicit the President's approbation of this measure with $25,000 to be placed in the hands of General Atkinson's quartermaster for the purchase of the horses and to defray other contingent expenses of the present expedition. Should the hostile party be sustained by the principal chiefs and warriors of the nation, supposed to consist of near 1,500, or should any of the neighboring nations unite with them in the war, I shall in that event, without loss of time, repair to the spot with all the force that I can take from Jefferson Barracks and from the new post upon the Missouri, and with the aid of that under General Atkinson shall endeavor to settle the affair as speedily as possible. I have, etc. Signed, Edmund P. Gaines, Major General by brevet commanding, etc. The Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War, Washington, D.C. End of Section 6. Section 7 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Tommy McCoy. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Memorandum of a letter from General Atkinson to Governor Cass, which has been accidentally left with Major Whistler, commanding at Green Bay. The substance of it is stated from recollection. It is dated. Prairie du Chien, July 31st, 1827. General Atkinson states his arrival at the Prairie with about 500 men. Colonel Snelling had previously reached there with about 4 companies of his regiment, making General Atkinson's whole force about 700 men. A detachment had been sent into the country, but no traces of the Indians had been discovered. It was supposed that the hostile party had left the Mississippi and had concentrated on the Wisconsin. General Atkinson states it as his opinion that the persons who committed the murder at the Prairie and a few of the principal Winnebagos who attacked the boat should be apprehended at all events, and that nothing short of this measure will afford security to the frontier. He doubts whether he ought to take any offensive operation without the instruction of the government, and requests the opinions of Governor Cass respecting the measures he ought to undertake. 6 Winnebago chiefs had been apprehended and were in confinement at the Prairie. He was determined to remain inactive at all events until the return of the express. Copy of a letter from General Atkinson to General Gaines, dated at English Prairie, 80 miles above Prairie du Chien, 20th September, 1827. General, I moved with the brigade under my immediate orders from Prairie du Chien on the morning of the 29th ultimo, in 5 keel and 4 Mackinaw boats. Last evening I was joined by General Dodge with 130 Galenia volunteers, mounted men. After proceeding this morning some 6 or 8 miles, I crossed his party to the north side of the river. We proceed in the morning for the Wisconsin portage. I yet think the Winnebagos will give up the offenders. This I shall press. I shall endeavor to adjust the difficulty with as little delay as possible. End of Section 7.
Section 8 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 8, titled, Copy of a Letter from General Atkinson to General Gaines, dated at English Prairie, September 27th, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. General, I moved with the brigade under my immediate orders from Prairie du Chien on the morning of the 29th ultimo in 5 keel and 4 Mackinaw boats. Last evening I was joined by General Dodge with 130 Galena volunteers, mounted men. After proceeding this morning some 6 or 8 miles, I crossed his party to the north side of this river. We proceed in the morning for the Wisconsin portage. I yet think the Winnebagos will give up the offenders. This I shall press. I shall endeavor to adjust the difficulty with as little delay as possible. End of Section 8. Read by A. Baker, Austin, Texas, January 26, 2023.
Section 9 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Copy of a letter from General Atkinson to General Gaines, August 27, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Copy of a letter from General Atkinson to General Gaines, dated Prairie du Chien, August 27, 1827. General: Our express returned from Green Bay on the 19th instant, bringing letters from Governor Cass, copies of which, and copies of my letters to him, also copies of several letters to and from myself to other persons, are herewith enclosed. You will perceive that the Governor has not settled our difficulties with the Winnebagos, although they were in council with him a fortnight. You will also see the manner in which he has left the matter to be adjusted, with his views upon the course to be pursued. The assemblage of the chiefs at Green Bay has prevented me from entering upon a course of adjustment with them. They have answered the call I made upon them to meet me here, by saying they could not leave the ground till the council of Governor Cass was over. They would then, they said, apprehend the murderers and give them up to me. I have heard nothing of or from them since, nor have I received from Governor Cass the information promised in his letter of the 10th instant to me, sent by express, relative to the final result of his conference with them. Yesterday 4 Winnebago Indians arrived here at 12 o'clock from a village 18 leagues up the Wisconsin. Caramane, an old chief of not much note, was of the number. He stated, as none of his people had returned from the council, and not hearing what had been done there, he had come to pay me a visit and learn the news. I doubt the truth of his statement. I believe he was sent here by the nation to see how he would be received, preparatory to the coming of them of more consequence. I sent him back immediately, with instructions to send runners to the different bands for their chiefs to come to me without delay to settle the existing difficulties. He readily promised to do so, and said the chiefs would very soon come. I propose in a few days to take a position at the Wisconsin portage, for the purpose of pressing on the Winnebagos the necessity of surrendering up the murderers. I only wait for the arrival of a low steamboat of light draught, which is expected hourly. If she does not arrive in a day or two, I must make my way up in keels and some light craft which we have here. The movement has now become more necessary, as Major Whistler has, I expect, moved upon that point with a small force. It will be difficult, however, to penetrate the Indian country from thence for the want of transportation. I may receive information in the meantime to induce me to change my present purposes. I shall not act offensively till I receive orders, unless such a measure should become indispensable. Colonel Snelling arrived at Fort Snelling on the 16th instant, and Major Fowl from thence at this place on the 21st instant. I wait with much anxiety for instructions from you. End of section 9. Section 10 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. General E. P. Gaines to the Secretary of War, September 8, 1827, by Edmund P. Gaines. General E. P. Gaines to the Secretary of War. Headquarters, Western Department, St. Louis, September 8, 1827. Sir: I met at this city this morning 2 letters from General Atkinson, one dated at Prairie du Chien, the 27th August, 1827, and the other at English Prairie, on the Wisconsin, the 2nd of the present month, copies of which I enclose herewith. By the first of these letters you will perceive the object of General Atkinson's movement towards the Wisconsin portage, and by the last that he had proceeded 80 miles in advance of Prairie du Chien and had been joined by General Dodge of Illinois with 130 volunteer militia. The measures of Governor Cass, of which I cannot doubt but that he has duly advised you, appear to me to have increased the difficulty of an adjustment of our late differences with the Winnebagos, and to have left erroneous and dangerous impressions on their minds, as well as on the minds of the other Indians who attended the late council at Green Bay, inasmuch as they were invited to attend the treaty, to receive provisions and presents, and they did in fact attend, continued for several days in council with the United States commissioners, received provisions and presents, agreeably to promise, and did finally conclude and sign a treaty, too, relating principally to subjects unconnected with the late outrages upon our frontier, and without referring otherwise than merely incidentally to those outrages which surely merited sufficient attention to have been placed, if not above every other possible subject of negotiation, at least on an equal footing with any other. The inevitable consequence of such measures will be to impress the Indians with an idea that we set but little value upon the lives of our citizens, and they will be more likely to renew their massacres than to make atonement for the past, or give a satisfactory pledge for their future good conduct. I am, etc., (Signed) Edmund P. Gaines. Hon. James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 10. Section 11 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Headquarters, Western Department, October 11, 1827, by Edmund P. Gaines. Jefferson Barracks, October 11, 1827. Sir: I have the honor to transmit herewith the reports of Brigadier General Atkinson, numbered 1 to 6 inclusively, giving a detailed account of the late expedition, which has terminated in an adjustment of our differences with the Winnebago Indians, with the voluntary surrender on the part of the chiefs of that nation of 6 of the principal offenders of the hostile party. To give effect to this arrangement, it is deemed essential to bring the offenders to a speedy trial and punishment. I had the honor to receive at Fort Armstrong, on my return from Forts Snelling and Crawford a few days past, your letter of the 4th of last month. Very respectfully, I have the honor to be your obedient servant, Edmund P. Gaines, Major General by Brevet, commanding. The Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 11. Section 12 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December, 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report Number 1, September 17, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Number 1, Headquarters, Right Wing, Western Department, Prairie du Chien, 17 September, 1827. General: I have only time to inform you of my return to this post on the 13th instant from the Wisconsin portage. I have succeeded in obtaining the surrender of the 4 Winnebago Indians who committed the murder here, and who afterwards excited and led the attack on the keel boats on their descent from Fort Snelling. I have demanded the surrender of 2 others, which the chiefs promise shall be given up in a day or 2. They have placed hostages in my hands for the security of this promise. I expect to be able to close all our difficulties with those Indians and return to Jefferson Barracks by the 1st of October. Your communications from Cincinnati of the 14th, 22nd, and 24th ultimo reached me this morning. The course I have pursued in my operations in this quarter accord pretty nearly with your instructions. I have required no cession of land from the Winnebagos because, at the time, I did not feel authorized to make a treaty of that nature. I have, however, entered into written articles with them, stipulating that the white people in the mining district of country shall procure mineral unmolested till the government shall appoint a commission to fix a boundary. I deemed it advisable to open the subject in this way, that the government might more easily effect a cession of lands from them, and in the meantime to give security to the miners. The articles entered into with the tribe shall be forwarded to you with my detailed report, which shall be made out as early as practicable. If the Winnebagos, contrary to my expectation, should fail to give up the remaining 2 men demanded of them, I shall hold in custody the 9 hostages I have in my hands, and take such further steps as the case may demand. The nation appear to be overawed and subdued in their feelings, and I think the marching of so formidable a force as we did into the heart of their country will have the most salutary and lasting effect. With very great respect, sir, I have the honor to be your most obedient servant, H. Atkinson, Brigadier General, U.S. Army. Major General Gaines, Coming West Department, now at Jefferson Barracks. End of section 12. Section 13 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Betty B. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report number 2, September 20th, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Number 2, Headquarters, Right Wing, Western Department, Prairie du Chien, 20th September, 1827. General: This is the day on which I expect the Winnebagos will surrender up the remaining offenders demanded of them. I have scarcely a doubt upon the subject, as they have placed 6 of their principal men and 3 of less note in my hands as hostages. So soon as I accomplish this object, I will move with my brigade for Jefferson Barracks, leaving this post garrisoned by 4 companies of the 5th Regiment, under the command of Major Fow. With very great respect, sir, I have the honor to be your most obedient servant, H. Atkinson, Brigadier General, U.S. Army. Major General Gaines, Coming West Department, now at Jefferson Barracks. End of section 13.
Section 14 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 14. Report number 3, September 9th, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Provisional Articles. Enter into, between Brigadier General Henry Atkinson, U.S. Army, on the part of the United States, and the undersigned chiefs and head men of the Winnebago tribe of Indians, on the part of said tribe, subject to the approval of the President of the United States. Article 1st. Whereas some conflicting claims to the district of country east of the Mississippi River, lying between the Fever and Wisconsin rivers, exist, it is agreed that a commission shall be appointed by the President of the United States to meet the chiefs and head men of the Winnebago tribes of Indians and other tribes setting up claims to said district at Prairie du Chien, Galena, or such other convenient point as he may direct, in the course of the ensuing spring or summer, for the adjustment of such claims, and for running a line of demarcation between the lands of the United States and said claimants. Article 2nd. Until the above council shall meet and fix the line of demarcation, all citizens of the United States licensed by the President or his agents shall procure mineral in the district of country now and heretofore used for that purpose by the white people, free from the encroachment or interruption of the Winnebago Indians. In witness whereof the undersigned have hereunto put their hand and seals this 9th day of September, 1827, at Camp Wisconsin Portage. H. Atkinson, Brigadier General, USA. Karamani, his mark. Dekori, his mark. Wonowasikar, his mark. Kashkipar, his mark. Maiwito-akintgur, his mark. Karamani, the lame, his mark. Karachoakar, his mark. Marmampa, his mark. Konoanikar, Zairar, his mark. Chunkar, Kishoanyakar, his mark. Hitshoneankar, his mark. Shunshunk, his mark. Sharpikar, Woku, his mark. Dekori, Rartshirikar, his mark. Chineushkarchikar, his mark. Karkansarkar, his mark. Har Haimarnekar, his mark. Wagi Mosarmukar, his mark. Ha Sunakikar, his mark. Horshkatikar, his mark. Pachkarikar, his mark. Hiwitshoakar, his mark. Wankshikunikar, his mark. Noachukikar, his mark. Signed in the presence of W. Morgan, Lieutenant Colonel, 5th Infantry. H. Dodge, commanding Galena Volunteers. Samuel Whiteside, J. M. Strode, William Henry, M. McTreer, J. Marsh, U.S. Indian Agent. R. B. Mason, Captain, 5th Infantry. S. W. Kearney, Major, USA. S. Marquis, Lieutenant and Aide-de-camp. A. Drain, ACS, USA. Washington Wheelwright, Lieutenant, 1st Artillery. W. L. Harris, Lieutenant, 1st Infantry. R. Riley, Captain, 6th Infantry. R. Alston, Lieutenant, 4th Infantry. Thomas P. Gwynn, Lieutenant, 1st Engineers. J. W. Kingsbury, Lieutenant, 1st Regiment, Infantry. F. Saugrain, Pierre Paquette, his mark. J. Swearingen, Lieutenant, 6th Infantry. John Fowle, Major, U.S. Army. End of section 14, read by Sandra.
Section 15 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Angela Ortiz. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report Number 4, September 22, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Number 4. Headquarters, Right Wing, Western Department, Prairie du Chien, 22nd September, 1827. To all whom it may concern, know ye that the Winnebago nation, having surrendered up all the offenders in the late transgressions that have been demanded of them, and showing an entire submission to the authority of the United States, I have granted them peace. Their country is opened to licensed traders, and they are to be treated as friends, so long as they demean themselves peaceably. Given under my hand, H. Atkinson, Brigadier General, U.S. Army. Copies were furnished the Indians. End of section 15.
Section 16 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report Number 5, September 22nd, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Le Prairie du Chien, September 22nd, 1827. Memorandum of the witnesses to be called on the trial of the Winnebago prisoners, in confinement at this place for the murder of Registre Guaguier and Solomon Lipcap, and for wounding and scalping a child of the said Registre Guaguier, with an intent to kill, to wit Benjamin Esquire, or L'Écuyer, James Esquire, or L'Écuyer, and Peter Grugon, inhabitants of Green Bay, and Peter Pocket of the Portage of the Wisconsin. These witnesses will prove that the Red Bird and the Sun confessed that they were guilty of the murder with which they were charged, and for which they were surrendered by their nation. The wife of Guaguier is a witness against all the four concerned in the above-mentioned murders. Louison Bart, a Winnebago interpreter, residing at this place, will prove that the brother-in-law of the Red Bird confessed to General Atkinson and others that he had shot Lipcap. The son of the Red Bird, who, it is probable, had no concern in the murder, but who was present when it was committed, is also an important witness. He is now in confinement at this place, and will be held in confinement until the other three are tried. Louison Bart will prove that Calumet Eagle, one of the prisoners, confessed to General Atkinson that he fired on the keel boats. Against Little Thunder, another prisoner, there is no testimony except that of the son of the Red Bird, who will prove he fired on the boats. End of section 16. Read by Sandra. Section 17 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Report Number 6, September 28, 1827, by Henry Atkinson. Headquarters, Right Wing, Western Department, Jefferson Barracks, 28th September, 1827. General, I have the honor to inform you of my return to this post yesterday from the upper Mississippi with the detachments of the 1st and 6th Regiments of Infantry, after a passage of 4½ days from Prairie du Chien. You are informed by my communication of the 17th instant of the Winnebago nation having at the Wisconsin portage surrendered the 4 Indians who committed the murder at Prairie du Chien, and excited and led the attack on the keelboats returning from Fort Snelling, and of the promise of the chiefs to deliver up 2 other leading men implicated in the affair. On the evening of the 21st instant, the last mentioned 2 men were surrendered at Fort Crawford, one a young chief and the other a noted brave. In limiting my demand to the surrender of only 6 men, all the principal offenders that are now alive were included, and I was under the impression that that number would be quite sufficient for an example, and as many as would be executed if a greater number were given up. My communications up to the 2nd instant gave an account of my operations to that time, but to exhibit a correct view of the character of the recent disturbances and a consequent movement of the troops, it is necessary to recur to the conduct of the Winnebagos for the last 9 months. As far back as that period, it has been ascertained that all the bands concurred in sending war clubs, belts, and pipes to the neighboring tribes as well as to some of the tribes to the south, with a view to produce a general combination for the purpose of making war on our frontiers. It is difficult to say what impression was made on other tribes by these war messages, or how far it extended, but it is confidently believed that nothing but the prompt movement of the troops from this post prevented a war upon our northwestern frontier. It appears that towards the end of June was the time fixed upon for the commencement of hostilities. About the middle of that month, Mr. Marsh, sub-agent, was informed through the Sioux that Prairie du Chien would be attacked. On the 6th of June, a noted brave of the Prairie La Crosse band called the Red Bird, accompanied by 3 other men of the same band, came to Prairie du Chien and entered a farmhouse a little below the village and killed, mangled, and scalped a child of about 12 months of age. On the 30th, the Red Bird and his party returned to their village 80 miles above on the Mississippi with the trophies of their massacre. On the same day, the keel boats returning from Fort Snelling passed that point, and were attacked by the whole band, consisting of about 35 or 40 warriors. 7 Indians were killed, and 2 of the boat's crew in the rencontre. About the time of these occurrences, the Winnebagos on Rock River evinced a restless and hostile disposition. Persons going and returning from Illinois to the Fever River mines were robbed and insulted. A party from St. Louis were robbed, and one of them fired upon at the Rock River crossings. The huts of the miners were entered, their cooking utensils broken, and their provisions taken, and threats made that on the succeeding full moon the miners would be attacked and driven out of the country. Soon after hostilities had commenced at and above Prairie du Chien, the Winnebagos left their lower villages on Rock River, and their villages on the Mississippi and the Wisconsin, secreted their women and children, and assembled in a body at Coshquanon on the head of Rock River, assuming a determined spirit of hostility. At the moment of this preparation for war, Governor Cass arrived at St. Louis, bringing information of the hostilities that had been committed and of the attitude assumed by those Indians, and recommending officially a prompt movement of part of the force at this post to the scene of commotion. Being charged with the protection of the frontier, I could not hesitate on the course that should be pursued. Accordingly, I moved on the 15th of July with upwards of 500 effective men, and reached Fever River on the 27th, furnished the Committee of Safety of Galena with 200 stand of arms, 7,000 cartridges, and 200 pounds of cannon powder, and arrived on the 29th at Prairie du Chien, where I found the fort garrisoned by 4 companies of the 5th Regiment of Infantry and a company of militia under Colonel Snelling, who had a few days before arrived from Fort Snelling. Governor Cass having required the Winnebagos to meet him in council near Green Bay, it became necessary for me to suspend my operations till the result of their conference with him was known. I dispatched an express to him, informing him of my arrival at Fort Crawford, and of the course I considered it proper to be taken for the adjustment of the existing difficulties. In the meantime, till I could receive his answer, I took measures to provision Fort Snelling, which was destitute of bread, salt, vinegar, and beans, also measures for permanently garrisoning and provisioning Fort Crawford, and procuring some light craft to ascend the Wisconsin. Accordingly, Colonel Snelling was ordered back to Fort Snelling with the 4 companies of his regiment, then on duty under him, with a supply of flour for the post, and with instructions to send down 4 other companies of his regiment, under the orders of Major Fowle, and such light craft as could be obtained at or near St. Peter's. Our express returned from Green Bay on the 19th of August with letters from Governor Cass, copies of which you have received, stating he had not effected any adjustment of our difficulties with the Winnebagos, and expressed an apprehension that an attack would be made on the inhabitants of Fever River, and the necessity of my moving a body of troops to the Wisconsin portage. On the 21st of August, Major Fowle arrived at Fort Crawford with 4 companies of the 5th Regiment in 2 keel and 9 Mackinac boats. Having now provisioned Fort Snelling and received from thence some light craft and a detachment to garrison Fort Crawford, and such information from Governor Cass as to enable me to determine upon a course to be pursued, I decided upon the following: viz., to move to the Wisconsin portage with 13 companies of infantry and 2 6-pounders, and to call on the Committee of Safety of Galena for a body of mounted volunteers to accompany the regular troops, in order at once to put down all opposition on the part of the Winnebagos, and quiet the alarm at Fever River and on our frontier. Being destitute of horses or land transportation, I deemed the services of a body of mounted men highly essential, as by dismounting a part of them horses could be obtained for the service of our field pieces, and for transporting a small supply of provisions in the event of its becoming necessary to act offensively against the Indians. On the 29th of August I moved with the regular troops and commenced the ascent of the Wisconsin in 5 keel and 10 Mackinac boats. General Dodge from Galena with 130 mounted men joined me on the 1st of September, and on the 6th we received the portage. Major Whistler had arrived from Green Bay on the 1st of September at a point on Fox River opposite, with 2 companies of the 2nd Regiment, a company of militia, and a body of New York and Menominee Indians. 2 of the offenders on our near approach were surrendered to Major Whistler on the 3rd of September. On the 8th, the Winnebago chiefs who had assembled at the portage met me in council and delivered up 2 other offenders. These 4, the Redbird, the son, a brother-in-law of Redbird, and a son of Redbird, were the persons who committed the murder at Prairie du Chien, but declared their inability to surrender at that time 2 principal men of the Prairie La Crosse band, whom I had demanded, and proposed to deliver them up in a few days at Fort Crawford. On the 9th, the chiefs again met me in council. Believing they were at the time unable to make the surrender demanded of them, I consented to wait for their delivery at Fort Crawford as proposed by them, they giving up hostages for the fulfillment of their promise. Having arranged the business thus far, I proceeded to guard the immediate interest of the inhabitants of Fever River by entering into written articles with the Winnebagos, stipulating that the miners should have an unmolested privilege of procuring mineral in the district of country between Fever River and the Wisconsin, until the government should appoint a commission to settle all conflicting claims to that section of country, with a view at the same time to open the subject that the United States might acquire a cession of mineral land from the Winnebagos and the Potawatomis, Ottoways, and Chippeways of Illinois, lying between the Mississippi, Wisconsin, and Rock rivers, in which the prosperity of the western country is deeply interested. Those articles are herewith submitted for the information of the government. Finding that the movement of the troops into the heart of their country had overawed and subdued all feeling of hostility or resistance on the part of the Winnebagos, I consented, at their earnest request, to grant them peace as soon as the 2 remaining offenders were given up. These were delivered on the 21st of September, and on the 22nd I issued a proclamation granting the peace sued for by them, a copy of which is herewith submitted. I left Fort Crawford garrisoned by 4 companies of the 5th Regiment under Major Fowle, provisioned for 12 months, and supplied with ordnance and ordnance stores, and I have no doubt that frontier is in a state of tranquillity that will not be shortly interrupted. It is very important that a special court should be ordered to sit at Prairie du Chien as early as practicable for the trial of the Winnebago prisoners. There are now 8 confined there, 2 of whom have been lingering in chains for 18 months. If the attention of the executive was called to the subject, I have no doubt but a court would at once be ordered. I submit a list of the testimony to be taken in the case of the 6 Indian prisoners recently confined. With very great respect, sir, I have the honor to be your most observant servant, H. Atkinson, Brigadier General, USA. Major General Gaines, Commander of the Western Department. End of section 17, read by Sandra.
Section 18 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan, Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, Section 18. Number 1 report from Thomas L. McKenney, Chickasaw Nation, October 10th, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. Number 1, Indian Affairs, Chickasaw Nation, 10th of October, 1827. Sir, I have met the Chickasaw chiefs in council, and in pursuance of your instructions, ascertained their views in regard to their removal west of the Mississippi. They consent to go on the following basis. First, that provision be made for 3 chiefs from each of their district. There are 4 of these, 3 white men of their own choosing, and a physician, to be joined by 3 scientific men from Washington or elsewhere, to be appointed by the government to go with them and visit the country and judge of its fitness in soil, climate, etc. They agree to go upon this business of examination on the 1st of May next. Second, if they approve the country, They consent to accept it acre for theirs, provided it be cleared of everybody and guaranteed to them forever, and provided they be placed upon it in such improvements as, on examination, they may be found to own here, in houses, mills, fences, orchards, stock, etc., and provided the country be laid off into counties, and schools established in sufficient number for the education of their sons and daughters, and a government be established over them upon the basis of that of the Michigan Territory, and provided that a suitable force be kept among them to secure them from harm, which they propose to augment by an organization of their people upon the plan of our militia, the whole to embrace on their part political privileges and civil advantages as these are laid down in your report. I need not tell you that I found the subject one of extreme delicacy, and the way to it almost wholly barred by excited prejudices and a deep sense of wrongs long endured. Upon a full survey of the whole ground, from Saturday till yesterday, I concluded there was but one way of approach. This I attempted, and it succeeded as stated. I will have the honor of forwarding, the moment I can find time to copy them, my address, with a minute of the proceedings of the council, and the answer of the chiefs. The council included all the chiefs of the nation except 3, and these were prevented by causes over which they had no control from attending. But the nation will bear out those who have acted, and it now remains for the government to sanction and confirm the understanding, or to decline it. I shall leave here in half an hour for the Choctaw Nation, having sent runners ahead to Colonel Ward to assemble the chiefs to meet me. I wrote in haste, and in my tent, and upon my knee, not a little fatigued from the anxiety and toil of yesterday, and from being up till late, concluding and signing the conditional understanding with these people. The Reverend Messieurs Stewart and Bell, and Blair and Holmes attended the council. It affords me sincere pleasure to state that those gentlemen most heartily cooperate with the government on the subject of removing to a permanent and suitable home these long oppressed people. They agree that the salvation of these people can be secured in no other way. You may rely upon it that the Chickasaws are honest in their designs to fulfill every tittle of their obligations if their terms are accepted. I believe it is the only ground on which they will listen to an exchange of country, and I must add, we ought to ask of them to assume no other. I have the honor to be, with great respect, your most obedient servant, Thomas L. McKinney. To the Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War, I omitted to add that a condition is inserted providing for reservations for some of their people not exceeding 20. I could not do else, after so unexpectedly favorable a result, than make these chiefs, some of them aged and poor, and who come from 20 to 50 miles to meet me without knowing for what, for I kept everything to myself till yesterday, except to tell them and to counsel them as their friend. A present of $50 each, and the lesser chiefs $25, with a present of goods amounting to about $245 for their families, in all about $750 on bills to each one on Major Smith, with authority to him to draw on you for their respective amounts. This is a cheap counsel. I have promised a medal to each chief in addition, and some 3 or 4 rifles to the young men. I have tried to give pleasure to all, and I believe have succeeded. Thomas L. McKinney. End of section 18. Section 19 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 19. Number 2 report from Thomas L. McKenney at the Mayhew Mission Station in Choctaw Country, October 10, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. Number 2. Mayhew Mission Station, Choctaw Country, October 10, 1827. Sir, I had the honor of writing to you yesterday from the Chickasaw Nation, 35 miles from this, that I had, the day before, concluded a conditional arrangement with the chiefs of that nation for an exchange of their country, the outlines of which arrangement I had the honor in that letter hastily to embody. I now enclose herewith copies of my address, their answer, and my reply marked ABC. It will be seen from my address that I act as well for the Indians as for the government, and from their answer that the address was in all things fully responded to. It may, perhaps, be proper for me to explain why I assumed to act in this twofold character, and why the Indians were not left to propose their own terms. It might be sufficient for me to state that I have never been able to separate the justice and honor of the government from the best interests of the Indians, and assuming this to be true, my duty, to say nothing of policy, embraced not only the province of a negotiator on the part of the government, but under the existing state of things, of moderator, and as far as I might esteem it essential to the great object in view, guide also. And it might be added that no exception ought to be taken against the adoption of any means that are in themselves moral and just, which may be used with the view of accomplishing a righteous end, and surely none, if those means result, as in the present case, in the accomplishment of such an end. But I prefer to be more particular. Aware of the settled dislike of these people to anything in the shape of a direct proposition for their country, and that recent negotiations, though conducted by 3 distinguished citizens, chosen no less on account of their intelligence than for their admitted knowledge of the Indian character, had totally failed, and that the great amount of means which, by congressional appropriation, had been placed at their disposal as an auxiliary aid, had been equally inoperative. It would have been presumptuous in me, when employed in the same service, and so immediately after the recent failure, and unsupported by a single dollar, to have occupied any of the positions assumed by those commissioners, or to have approached the subject by any one of the avenues which had been trodden by them. There appeared to me to be one way, and only one way left, and that was the way of my preference, and would have been under any circumstances. But although thus restricted by my views of the subject, I felt the greater enlargement and more confirmed hopes of success. The way, in a word, was precisely that in which from my heart I preferred to approach these people. Accordingly, I gave out on entering the nation that my visit was a visit of friendship, that I had taken a long journey to see and shake hands with my brothers, the chiefs of the Chickasaw nation, and as they were scattered over the country, and my time was short, I hoped they would meet me at Levi Colbert's, where I would remain a few days to give them time to come in. And to make sure of their receiving this message, I sent runners, where I could do so, to deliver it to the chiefs personally. On arriving at Colbert's, which was on the 8th day after my leaving Memphis, visiting in my way, in pursuance of your instructions, the missionary establishments, which, together with my visits to the agencies on my entire route, also in pursuance of your instructions, will form the subject of a special communication. I found I had been preceded by Major James Colbert and the old interpreter McGee, who, on receiving my message, had hastened to meet me. I was received by Levi Colbert, who is the counselor of the nation, and by these two men with every demonstration of gladness. I repeated the message that I had sent through their country, when Levi Colbert, in reply to the hope I expressed that I should not be disappointed, asked how long I could remain. I answered until Monday. "If," said he, "you will tarry till Wednesday, I will try and have them all in, and if possible by Tuesday at 12 o'clock. I consented, when he immediately sent off runners from 20 to 50 miles round. Meanwhile the chiefs began to arrive, until by Monday night they had all come in except 3, and 2 of these were sick, and 1 was absent. One of the former, however, sent an aide to represent him. Each chief met me with the utmost cordiality, and in terms of friendship and confidence that it would be tedious to state. I will, however, note the language of Levi Colbert. "It makes my heart glad, brother," said he, "to see you. I feel as if some good thing was to happen to us." Then, grasping my hand, he continued, "Yes, and never since about 3 years ago, when I left my son with you, have I gone to sleep without having you before my eyes. You are our friend, and we all look upon your visit as a great blessing, for we are in trouble." Footnote. His reference was, as I found afterwards, to their domestic matters, but especially to their agency concerns. End of footnote. I replied that a regard for them and a strong desire to see them and to see them happy had brought me into their country, that their troubles, of whatever sort they might be, should have my closest attention, and such as I could relieve on the spot I would, and such as I could not I would take home to their great father at Washington, who looked upon them as his children, and would listen attentively to their cries, and then added that I knew of some of their troubles, and serious enough they were, and if they would meet me in council in the morning, I would prove to them that I was their friend, by showing them the ways to become a great and a happy people, and by advice in other things, which, if they regarded their own happiness and the happiness of their children, I hoped they would take. They greeted this language like a people would the return of milder and calmer seasons, after having been long buffeted by storms and tempests, and replied, "We know you well. We promise to meet you in council, and listen well to what you may say." I then prepared the address as it now stands, giving none of them, meanwhile, the slightest conception of the nature of the advice to which I had referred, nor had they any idea of it until it was disclosed by the address itself in council. It may now be seen why I adopted the course I did. I found myself surrounded by a people who appeared to look up to me as their friend. I felt that I had their confidence, and knew well that the charm of this powerful influence would have been dissipated by the very first sentence that I might have delivered, bearing directly on the subject of an exchange of their country. All their hopes in my friendship would have vanished, and the issue, I am confident, would have been a total failure, besides a loss of their confidence in the future. Our council met the next day, Tuesday, at 10 o'clock. There had been the evening before a severe storm of thunder and lightning and rain. The morning was bright and calm and beautiful. I told them I could not help thinking that the confusion and storm of last night, its restless and unsettled character, and the suffering which everything around appeared to endure, was an emblem of their own past lives. They had never been a composed and settled people, but were like the storm of yesterday, in constant excitement, and knew no rest. They answered, "It is so." But this morning, I continued, is calm and beautiful, and I cannot help hoping that the Great Spirit has sent it as an emblem of what your future lives are to be. They said, "It did look a good deal like it." 4 of the missionaries being present, having come that morning on my invitation to attend the council, I added, "The business we are about to engage in being viewed by me of the greatest importance, and as the Great Spirit directs and governs all things, and takes pleasure in seeing his children happy, it is my wish, if you have no objection, that our aged father, Bell, would ask the Great Spirit to smile upon our council and direct our deliberations to a happy and prosperous issue. That in their great father's great council in Washington, a good man every morning spoke to the Great Spirit, and asked for direction in all things, and to bless their deliberations. They answered, 'It will be very agreeable to us.' When this excellent and useful and venerable missionary prayed accordingly, I then told them I had a great respect for the pipe. It was an emblem of peace and friendship, that I had brought a long and handsome one, made by their brothers on the other side of the Mississippi, which, if one of their young men would fill and light, we would smoke. They answered, 'That is good. The pipe is the Indians' we will be glad to smoke.' It was lit and smoked accordingly. I then told them I was ready to hear them, and as they had spoken of troubles, I would listen attentively to them, and promised to relieve them all I could. These I will have the honor to hand to you on my return, with a statement of my reply, and what I did towards a relief of their grievances. Having heard all they had to say, and noted it all down, I told them I would now make good my word by showing them that I was their friend, and give them advice which I doubted not they would follow. That to have all well understood, and that their interpreter might be able the better to interpret it, I had written it down and would read it. They spoke and said, "We will be glad to hear you." I then delivered the address, and the council rose at about 1 o'clock. In the afternoon they assembled by themselves to deliberate, and in 2 hours sent me word they had agreed to all I had said, and asked for my paper from which to make out their answer. By 12 o'clock at night the whole business was closed. I hope I may be excused for including in this report the foregoing detail. It will no doubt be tedious, but I mean it to take the place of the usual accompaniment of a separate paper containing the proceedings of such councils. I will now proceed to offer some remarks on the terms proposed for an exchange of country with those people, and which they are sincere in their desire to carry into effect, and upon the probable cost attending their execution. The reasonableness of the liberty proposed to be granted to them first to examine the country will not be disputed, nor will, it is presumed, the stipulation which provides that the cost of the examination shall be ours. The justice of both is too apparent to need illustration or justification. The proposition to emigrate comes from us, not from them. The cost of looking at the country to which they are invited to go, and which we propose to give them in exchange for theirs, it were time thrown away to attempt to prove, should be ours, and as little would it comport with justice for us to ask them to leave their homes and such comforts as they have here, without providing them with homes as good there
and comforts of at least equal extent. Their workshops and their mills, though few in number, and common enough, are the labor of their own hands, and should not be asked of them without an equivalent, not in quantity only, but in kind, and even improved. They should not be left to toil again in their erection. A want of skill quadruples the labor, if performed by them, and the absence of science multiplies it even beyond that. The work should be done for them. As to their stock, it is their personal wealth, and not attaching to the soil here, and being indispensable to them anywhere, it should not be considered a burden to replace it for them, and at our cost, at their new homes. Theirs they could not get there, and it would not comport with our magnanimity as a great nation to ask them to sell, and give us the money wherewith to purchase more. When they shall sell, they will need the proceeds to pay off their debts, settle up their affairs here, and should any be left, it will be needed wherewith to secure those little comforts which, as human beings, they may require in a new country, and for which there is no provision in the terms of exchange, not even the usual one of support, for a year after they shall arrive at their new homes. This, then, will be the only item for which we do not receive at least a partial equivalent here in the increased value which their houses and fences, etc., will add to the lands proposed to be left by them, unless indeed it be thought proper to count the cost of supporting the government of the territory proposed to be established over them, and of the county schools. These latter we are bound in common justice to support anywhere, if we mean to maintain our character for an enlightened and humane and Christian people. And as to the former, or both, what I ask is their cost compared with the proceeds of all this vast and fine country which they propose to abandon. Nor will it be thought unreasonable that they should be made secure in the new country to which they propose to go, because here they lie down and rise up in the most perfect security. There their fears at least may be alarmed, if no more. It becomes us, therefore, to see to their security. Justice and humanity both demand it. It is presumed that no exception will be taken to their having a government, or their being represented in the manner stipulated in the Congress. Both measures are right in themselves. And as to the privilege of sending a delegate to Congress, if the privilege of living under a government be ceded, it appears to follow as a consequence, and a consequence no less important to ourselves than to them. This connecting tie between the territorial government there and the Congress here, it is presumed, would be esteemed indispensable. But if there be any exceptions taken to it, they can be those only arising out of prejudice, and this feeling it is easier to meet and overcome by precedent than argument. In compliant to it, therefore, I will refer to a similar privilege guaranteed in 1785, I think, and in the 12th article of the Treaty of Hopewell. If I am not mistaken, the provision is in these words, quote, that the Indians, meaning the Cherokees, may have full confidence in the justice of the United States respecting their interests. They shall have the right to send a deputy of their own choice whenever they think fit to Congress. Unquote. This may suffice. It may possibly be thought by some that money should have been proposed as an equivalent for the enumerated improvements which it is proposed to abandon, and on the grounds that the government would be saved the trouble of building and putting up houses and mills and fences, etc., in their new country. I could not in my conscience recommend this. All who know anything of the Indian character know how improvident they are, and will admit that a moneyed consideration would be a fruitful source of evil to them, and would doubtless render the majority of them homeless and houseless for the rest of their lives. A recent illustration has been had of the impoverishing effects of a money payment in the Creeks. I believe them to be poorer, and to have suffered more since they received the large amounts secured to them under the Treaty of Washington than they have been for 20 years before. Besides, it will not be a task of such difficult accomplishment, nor will the cost be so enormous, as perhaps at first view it might appear, and this I proceed now to show. In regard to the first, the whole undertaking should be upon contracts, in the usual form of public advertisement, and by bond and security, for the faithful execution of the trust. There should be 3 contracts, one for building houses and mills, one for putting up fences and planting orchards, and one for supplying the stock, etc. Commissioners should be appointed to examine and report the kind and sizes and numbers of houses, and the quantity of fences and orchards, etc. here. And now for the probable cost. The population of the Chickasaw nation may be put down at 4,000, they having increased about 400 within the last 5 or 6 years. I will suppose the families to average 5 souls each, which will give 800 houses. These houses, judging from what I have seen, and from inquiries made with a view to the estimate, may be built, with the addition of puncheon floors, for an average cost of $150. This I think a high estimate. The most of them I have seen are on rough logs, piled up in a square, with roofs of boards, confined down by pins and saplings, and daubed in, such of them as are filled in at all, with mud. The chimneys, those that have any, are generally of split or round sticks, put up in squares and daubed with mud, and the houses are generally small and comfortless, and might, numbers of them, be put up for $10 and $20. But there are some comfortable houses owned by the half and quarter breeds, some of which, and the best of them, but they are few, may have cost 1,000, and some, including their cribs and stables, etc., $2,000. The estimate of $150 for each family, I think, will cover the cost of building, if the country they may select be a wooded country, and they will take care to select no other. This branch of the expenditure, then, may be put down at $120,000. The number of their mills, it is believed, does not exceed 10. I estimate these to cost an average of $500 each, which is $5,000. Their workshops I do not think exceed 50, which, with their tools, may be estimated at $50 each, or $2,500 for this item. Their orchards are few and limited in extent, and may be replaced for $1,000. Their fences may be estimated to cost $50,000. Their stock of all kinds, averaging 2 horses and 2 cows, and 5 hogs and a dozen of poultry to each, and the price of a horse at $40, of a cow at 10, a hog at 5, and a dozen of poultry at $1, will make a total of $84,800. The probable cost of the visit to examine the country I estimate at $10,000, and of their removal to it at $100,000. The total of cost, except the annual estimate for the government, the schools, and the military, is, according to the foregoing estimate, $395,800. Or, suppose a fourth be added, so as to show the utmost extent of cost, it will make the cost $494,750. The annual expense on account of the government may be assumed to be the same as that of Florida or Michigan, for the support of schools annually for 20 years, where the limit may be fixed at $50,000, and for the military not more than it would require to support 10 companies elsewhere, and I assume that this force, if judiciously located or moved about, would be sufficient in the present broken state of the Indian power. Nor need this be retained but for a few years, as the proposed organization of their own people will doubtless very soon supersede the necessity for it. In regard to the missionary establishments, these would, of course, be broken up here. But these excellent people would follow their present charge to their new homes, whilst justice would demand that a remuneration of the amount expended by them in buildings and improvements over and above that received from the government should be made to them. It would, from what I have seen, be fully realized in the extra price which the lands they stand on would bring, and which might be sold, owing to the high state of improvement in most of them, at a great advance. This sum, too, would form part of the fund for the civilization and improvement of the Indians, wherever they may settle, as it has been applied here. I am aware that exceptions are taken by some to the policy of a removal, even under such circumstances, or indeed under any. But whenever the time may come for a trial, it can be defended, and unless I am wholly deceived in the entire scheme, it can be demonstrated to be the only policy by which the Indians can be saved and elevated to that rank of being which there can be no doubt it is the pleasure of their Maker they should enjoy. I shall leave here tomorrow for the Choctaw Agency, having sent an express with my greetings to the chiefs and an invitation to meet me at the agency. I hope to conclude my interview with them by Tuesday next, when I shall pass on to the Cherokees and thence to the Creeks. Should the Creeks not have concluded to cede that strip of land, I shall endeavor, under your special instructions, to secure it, and will at the same time ascertain their dispositions to unite in the plan adopted by the Chickasaws. I can form no opinion of the probable success which may attend my interviews with the remaining tribes, but hope for the best. One thing, I think, may be assumed as certain, and that is, if the Chickasaws become once placed under the kind of government proposed to be given to them, the other 3 southern tribes will follow. It may require time, but they will all, in my opinion, with suitable management, eventually go. I have the honor to be, with great respect, your obedient servant, Thomas L. McKinney. Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 19. Section 20 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 20, Attachment A, Talk delivered to the Council held with the Chiefs of the Chickasaw Nation, October 9, 1827, by Thomas L. McKinney. Section A, Talk delivered to the Council held with the Chiefs of the Chickasaw Nation, at Levi Colbert's, on Tuesday, October 9, 1827, by Thomas L. McKinney. Friends and brothers, I have long wished to see and shake hands with the chiefs and head men of the Chickasaw Nation. The Great Spirit has made my way clear, and I am come. My heart is glad. Brothers, This visit, so long wished for on my part, I sincerely hope may not be without its use to you and your people. It is to show you my heart that I am come. I know there is nothing in it but friendship for you, and the more I can make my heart plain, the more will you see why I am come. I have nothing to conceal from you. You are my brothers. My great difficulty will be in making plain to you what I see, though I see it so clearly myself, and that is, the path which is to lead you and your children's children to prosperity and happiness. Is not this the path you all desire to walk in? Brothers, give me your ears, and what is of equal importance, give me your confidence. If you think I am come to do you wrong, or give you bad counsels, you do me great injustice. I am not come but as your friend, and if there is a chief present who doubts this, let him speak, and I will not say another word. Brothers, I know well who you are that I am addressing. I know you are not children, but men, and men of experience, and men of wisdom. I know, too, that the smoke of this council fire comes not of ashes, but of living fire. It rises out of our hearts, for we are friends. Brothers, you have long had your eyes open upon the past. You have seen much, and your hearts have suffered much. Brothers, what have you seen? It pains me to call your attention to it, but I must be just to you. And if a review of what has gone by is painful, it may also be useful. Look to the rising sun. Was there not a time when the red men roamed free over all the hills and reposed in all the valleys, even to where the sun comes up from behind the eastern mountains? But who occupies all that great country now? Not the red men. Purchase after purchase has been made, until those who are left, and they are few indeed, like the few dying leaves that quiver off the trees after the frost has come, until those few, I say, have got back to this distant region, and now, though you were once a strong and mighty people, you are weak and poor and helpless. Brothers, this thought would not be painful to you if, after all your difficulties and the thinning of your people, those of you who remain were situated as men ought to be, if your present state were secure, if you felt easy on your lands, and if no more evils appeared to await, or if you had hope to cheer you, a hope that would say something like this to you: it is true, you have been a wandering and afflicted people. You have become diminished to a few. But see there, in the future you will rejoice and be glad. There you will find a firm footing. No people will ever move you more. Your children will flourish, and your children's children will be a happy and a great people. Brothers, behold that hope now. I am come to bring it to you. It was that you might hear this cheering voice and see that lovely prospect that I am come. I knew you were afflicted, and I was sorry for you. I knew you were in darkness, and I am come to bring you light. But listen yet longer to what is not so agreeable. Brothers, need I tell you, who know so well what strife there is all around you, how your father, the president, is pressed to buy your lands? Need I tell you that it is because your country is surrounded and pressed upon all sides by the whites that he has so much trouble to keep you from being crushed by them? Need I tell you that your friends everywhere are full of anxiety about you? I am sure I need not. You know all this, and you feel it in your hearts, and it makes you sad. Brothers, when you are asked to exchange your country and leave it and go to another, you remember the past and think of your fathers. You say, here lie the bones of our fathers, and here has been the home of our infancy, and we love this country. This is honorable to you. It is proof that you have hearts, and that you are men. I think this more of a man who cherishes in his heart a sacred remembrance of his father and his mother, and who loves the land which covers their bones. Brothers, all that is noble, but then you are not to forget your children and your children's children. Your fathers are no more. Their spirits are gone up to the Great Spirit. What remains of them is but dust. They feel not and care not whether the foot of the red or the white man treads upon their graves. But your children live, and they feel, and they will feel, down to the latest generations. Brothers, whilst then you cherish a sacred remembrance for the bones of your fathers, forget not to provide for your children, and never stop a moment, but hasten with all speed to place them in a situation that will secure them against the evils that your fathers have endured, and from the sorrows that fill and afflict your own hearts. This, brothers, is wisdom. The past, I know, has been cloudy and dark enough. But, brothers, be not discouraged. The Great Spirit will yet open your way and shine upon your path. Brothers, am I too long keeping you from a sight of that path? Be patient, and I will show it to you in good time. Brothers, it was but the other day that you met commissioners who were sent to buy your country. You know what passed between you on that occasion. Now, brothers, I admit that no people ought to be asked to exchange their situation without a certain prospect of realizing a better. But no people should be so unwise, if an offer is made that will better their condition, as to reject it. That, you know, would be foolish, and men do not act so. Men always are seeking to do better. That is right, and it was to improve and do better that the Great Spirit put man on the earth. Brothers, I am not for the Indian's taking the white man's word in an affair of bargain and sale, but I advise him always to examine for himself. As your friend, I tell you now, always hear attentively, and then examine closely, and then decide. And when you convince yourselves that you can make a good bargain, make it. But be careful. Brothers, I know I am your friend. I have even suffered for being so. Yet I would not ask you to take my word in anything affecting your present or future welfare. But I would prefer that you should examine well into such momentous subjects for yourselves. All I feel free to do is to shed light upon your destiny, and as a brother advise, and were I not to do this, I should not be worthy to be called your friend. Brothers, I wish to counsel you as men, and not as children, and I am mistaken if your wisdom will not lead you by the light of this counsel fire to adopt my counsels, so far as these may go, and I shall take care that they shall go no farther than they ought. I will point out your path, and show you the way to honor and prosperity. It will be left to you to walk in it, or take another. Brothers, it is said, since you did not agree to the proposals of the commissioners, that you are self-willed and obstinate people. I do not believe it, but many people who do not know you as well as I do may incline to think this true. This, as far as it may be believed, will lessen the number of your friends, and these are few. You have not to spare. Now, I wish you to put it out of the power of any body to say so. I wish you to take such steps as shall convince the world that you are a people who require no more, when an offer is made to you, than that your acceptance of it should improve your condition, and put you out of reach of the evils that have afflicted you in the past, and make sure your prosperity for the future. When by your conduct you do this, you strike a stroke that will break down the power of your enemies, and this will make your friends numerous and strong, and make sure your prosperity wherever you may be. Brothers, is not all this reasonable? Have I said a single word that is not exactly agreeable to your own views? Do you not feel in your hearts that what I say is the truth? Brothers, I see the causes of your weakness and poverty. I see why it is that your fathers never maintained their ground, and the reason why you are as you are. I will tell you, brothers, here you are on a piece of land, surrounded by a great and powerful nation. In that nation you see a distribution of honors in appointments to office, in the state, in the army, and in the navy. You see the white man and his children flourish and prosper all around you, and made great. Then you look round on yourselves and on your children, and your hearts sink in you, because you are shut out from all these and are no people. You feel no emulation. You give up and say, what's the use of it? An impassable mountain is between our people and the honors and profits which the whites enjoy. They flourish and prosper, but we fade away and decay and die like our fathers. Brothers, there is a cause for this. Now listen, and I will tell you what that cause is. Open wide your ears, and I will tell you how to break down that mountain, and then you will see the path with light shining upon it, for you and your children to walk in. Brothers, when you were asked by the commissioners to exchange your country, that was your time. Then you had an opportunity of making yourselves a great people, and in all respects like the whites. That was your time to have put your feet on strong ground that never would have slipped from under them more. Brothers, our country, you might have said, is good enough for us. We are contented so far as that is concerned, but as you want it, you may have it, if you will agree to our terms. You ought to have told them, like all other people, we wish to better our condition. Show us how we are to do this, make it plain to us, prove it, and we will exchange. You might have asked if the country they offered you is healthy, if it is rich, if the water is plenty and good, and if it is, well wooded. If it is, point it out to us, and we will go directly and examine it. And then you might have said, if we like it, we will exchange, provided you will agree to make us a people by your first marking it out to us acre for ours, and then dividing it into counties, leaving a good piece in the center for a seat of government, and provided you give us parchment of our farms, that we may choose within that country, you driving everybody from it, and provided you guarantee it to us forever, with the right to sell to our brothers. Footnote, meaning Indians. End of footnote. By permission of our great father, the President of the United States, and provided you put up there houses and mills and fences and workshops, as good as we have got here, and provided you will give us stock there as we have it here, and provided you establish schools in all the counties, sufficient for the education of our children, and to teach our girls how to spin and manage household affairs, and provided you send a force there to protect us from danger, and organize our people into companies like your militia, to be commissioned by our great father, the President of the United States, and then establish a government for us, suited to our condition, with plain good laws, like one of your territories, and then give our people the right of suffrage, as they may be prepared by education to vote and take part in the government, and then allow us, after the territory is organized, to send a delegate to Congress, like your territories, and give us here a few reservations for people who may want them, and then we will exchange, if, after we look at the country and examine it well, we like it, you paying the expense of our going to see it, and when we go, of our removal to it. Make us in this way, you might have said, a people, and part of ourselves. Give us and our children the hope of rising above the sorrows and sufferings and degradation of the past. Secure to us our privileges as members of the great family of man, and then we will go. Brothers, an answer like that would have been the proper answer. You see it in the groundwork of your future greatness as a people. You see it includes everything. Brothers, it is this I have been aiming at for you. This is your path, and the light of reason, of justice, and of heaven shines upon it. Brothers, I will suppose the commissioners have rejected such terms. What then? Why, you would have convinced the world that you are not a self-willed and obstinate people. You would have made your friends strong, because you would have asked nothing but what is just, and in doing so you would have broken the power of your enemies. Brothers, I now put my finger on a country. Footnote. The map was open and before me. End of footnote. Will you not go and look at it? Should it turn out to be sickly or poor, or be not sufficiently watered and not well wooded, and should you be able to find no good country, why then who could ask you to leave your own? No good man would wish to impose it upon you to go to a country that you could not live in. And then, should that be the case, that there is no suitable country, why the next step would be to improve you all here as fast as possible, that the distinction which exists now might exist no longer, for you know, as many of you can read, that one great reason urged against your improvement is that if you are improved you will be less likely to part from your lands. Brothers, am I understood? Do you feel the force of my remarks? Have I opened the way for your eyes to see your future greatness? It is not yet too late. But perhaps you doubt whether anything so good could be granted. That is precisely what I want you to authorize me to try. I wish to carry home such an answer as I have told you ought to have been given to the commissioners to your great father. Let your terms be stated. Say how you will treat for your lands, and thus decide the question. Brothers, say to me, for the sake of your children and children's children, that you will go quick and look at the country. Fix the day, and let it be the 1st of next May. Now, let me tell you, is your time. The time for such terms never came before, and it may never come again. Take hold of it then, and if you think I know anything, and am your friend, put such a paper in my hands to take home with me. It may secure your future happiness, which is what I want, and your children's prosperity forever, and this will serve to make amends in some way for the sufferings of the past. Brothers, if you do not, I shall still fear, for the storm about Indians' lands is terrible indeed. I wish to screen you from it. Brothers, I have done. I pray the Great Spirit to direct you. End of section 20.
Section 21 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. By the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 21, Attachment B, Answer of the Chickasaw Chiefs to Colonel McKenney's Talk, October 9, 1827, by Tish-a Mingo and other Chickasaw Chiefs. B, Answer of the Chickasaw Chiefs to Colonel McKenney's Talk, Council Room, Chickasaw Nation, October 9th, 1827. Brother, we have opened our ears wide to your talk. We have not lost a word of it. We came together to meet you as an old friend and to shake hands with you. We were happy, and our hearts grew big when we heard you had come to our country. We have always thought of you as our friend. We have confidence in you. We have listened more close because we think so much of you. We know well you would not deceive us, and we believe you know what is best for us and for our children. Brother, do not you forsake us. Our friends, as you told us, are few. We have none to spare. We know that. Brother, you think it will be better for us to take your advice. It has truly made deep impressions on our hearts. Without making a long talk, as you are to leave us in the morning, we will state our terms for an exchange of country. We have no objection to our country. If we could be let alone, we might do well, but we are great sufferers. Everything seems against us, and we will agree to almost anything that can make our condition better. We believe if the government of the United States is honest towards us and wish us to be a people and not outcast always, that we may yet do better. We will now tell you what we will do. Brother, you would not wish us to move away and into a country where we could not live, and as well as we live here. Then, as you have pointed us out a country on the north of the state of Missouri, and between the Missouri and Mississippi River, and speak well of it, we agree first and foremost to go and look at it, and any other country that we may choose. When 12 of our people, 3 from each district, have examined it, assisted by a scientific doctor to see to our health, and by 3 good white men to be selected by ourselves, and 3 of your men of science from Washington or elsewhere. We say when we have examined it, if we like it, if its soil is good and well wooded, if water is plenty and good, we will agree to exchange acre for acre, provided you, on your part, will mark out the country and divide it into counties and leave a place in the center for a seat of government, and then drive everybody off of it and guarantee it to us forever. And as soon as may be, divide it for us into farms and give us a parchment for them to be recorded, with a right to sell to our brothers, with the consent of our father, the President of the United States, and provided also that in addition you examine our houses and mills and fences and our workshops here, also our orchards, and build and put up and plant as good there at such places within the territory as we may choose. Also, provided you count our stocks here and put an equal number and of each kind within their respective owners' limits there. Also, provided you establish schools in all the counties, sufficient for the education of our children, and to teach our girls how to spin and manage household affairs, and provided also you send a sufficient force there to ensure our protection and organize our people into companies, like your militia, to be commissioned by our father, the President of the United States, and provided that you establish a government over us in all respects like one of your territories, Michigan, for example, and give the right of suffrage to our people, as they shall be prepared by education to vote and act, and allow us, after the territory is organized, a delegate like your territories enjoy in Congress, and provided there be allowed to some of our people reservations not exceeding 20, to be surveyed and given to them on parchment, to sell if they please, like the white man. Brother, grant us these terms, better our condition as a people, give us the privileges of men, and if the country you point us to, or any other we may find, turns out to be acceptable to us, we will treat for exchange upon the above basis. We ask also for a millwright and 3 blacksmiths. They will be needed by us. Brother, we are willing to go next May in steamboats from Memphis to St. Louis, and thence over the line and examine the country thoroughly. And on the following spring, then we shall know all the seasons and how the climate is. Should you think proper to take us at our offer, provide the means, and let us know in time, say by the 1st of April next. The cost is to be yours and everything. And each of our people who may go must have a fine rifle, and horn, and powder, and lead, and plenty of things for an outfit, in provisions, and tobacco, and blankets, and the like. Brother, should our offer not be accepted, then we are done. We hope to be let alone where we are, and that your people will be made to treat us like men and Christians, and not like dogs. We tell you now, we want to make our children men and women, and to raise them high as yours, in privileges. We will have inducements then to do so. Now we have not. Brother, understand nothing is done unless the country we go to look at suits, and not then, unless all we require is agreed to on your part. Brother, we shake hands with you, and our hearts go with you. Tish-a Mingo, William McGilvery. Committee of the Nation. Stimo-luct, Pus-ta-la-tubbee, Ma-taash-to. Witness, Pitman Colbert, Secretary, to Colonel Thomas L. McKenney. End of section 21. Section 22 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan, Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 22. Attachment C. Colonel McKenney's reply to the Chickasaw Chiefs, October 9, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. Section C. Colonel McKenney's reply to the Chickasaw Chiefs, Council Room, Chickasaw Nation, October 9, 1827. Friends and brothers, I have received and read your answer to my talk to you of this morning. Having no powers to conclude an agreement with you, I have to state in answer that I will lose no time in laying before your father, the President of the United States, the terms on which you propose a compliance with his wish to see you a happy people on lands west of the Mississippi. So soon as he makes your views known to his great council, he will direct an answer to be made to you. In return for the confidence you have expressed in me, and for the promise that your hearts will go with me, I have to assure you that your confidence is not misplaced. In me you have always had a friend, and I hope always to remain so. I will never advise you but for your good. I will bear in mind that the hearts of the Chickasaw chiefs go with me, and this will make my journey home the more agreeable. For the hearts that go with me are the same that have stood by my country in the hour of danger, and often and fearlessly entered the battlefield in defense of American rights and liberty. It is not possible but that I should wish you and your posterity every possible prosperity and happiness. I shake hands with you, and pray the Great Spirit to preserve and bless you. Your friend and brother, signed Thomas L. McKenney, to Tish-a Mingo, Levi Colbert, and other chiefs of the Chickasaw Nation. End of chapter 22.
Section 23 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan.
Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs.
Section 23, Number 3 Report from T.L. McKenney at the Choctaw Agency, October 17, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. Number 3, T.L. McKenney to the Secretary of War, Choctaw Agency, October 17, 1827. Sir, I had the honor of writing you by the last mail from this place that I expected to hold a council with the Choctaw chiefs today. The arrival of Colonel Leflore at an earlier hour of the afternoon of yesterday than I expected enabled me to convene the council a little before sundown, which I was the more anxious to do from the peculiar slow movements of Indians, the tedious process of passing through the mouth of the interpreter what may be to be said, and above all from my increasing anxiety to get home. I was aware that I should have some obstacles to contend with of a new and imposing character, and such as it was doubtful whether anything could move. I knew that two chiefs, Pus-ta-la-tubbee and Cole, had been displaced to make way for Colonel Folsom and Leflore, and on the express grounds that they were to resist any and every proposition that might be made to the nation for a sale or exchange of territory. Then again, I saw difficulties in the plan of inviting them to another country, other than that which they already claim in Arkansas, and difficulties on the ground of the objections of that territory to Indians forming part of its population, in pointing them to their lands there. For to do this would destroy the harmony of the plan of uniting them under one head in a territory on the plan as approved by the Chickasaws. I concluded finally that all things should give way to the proposition as made to the Chickasaws, hoping that their acceptance of it might act as an encouragement and produce, if not a prompt acceptance, at least a willingness to break ground under cover of some pretext, so as to cooperate actually in the plan placed by the Chickasaws, though by seeming to reject it. I thought I saw this much in my first interview. It was afterwards confirmed. The chiefs were bound, I discovered, to reject openly any proposition of the sort, or bring upon themselves the charge of inconsistency, and possibly the rebuke, if not chastisement of the nation. I nevertheless resolved to try, and I accordingly addressed them in the main, upon the same ground as stated in the copy of my talk to the Chickasaws, adding some reasons derived from the question of state sovereignty and states' rights, and of their operation upon them, and in the simplest form. It made a deep impression. Came to my room and conversed with me till 12 o'clock at night, palliating his intended objections to the propositions, and yet manifestly approving them. He is an intelligent man, and withal ambitious, though honorably so, and felt the influence of the prospect which a government and the proposed provisions held out for his people, as indeed did , who is also a man of vigorous intellect. But I anticipated the answer which I should receive from them in council, and meanwhile prepared to elude its force. Indeed, one of the told me in plain terms it was not possible for the chiefs even to seem to approve it, as before another day the opposition, meaning the party who had been unchiefed by them, would declare they had sold their country, which, if it did not result in shooting them by the wayside or cutting their throats, would lose them their influence and put it out of their power, after the country should be examined and approved, to lead their people to it as proposed. He added it would be much easier to have persons go under any other form to get their report and treat afterwards. On receiving their verbal answer in council, which I have the honor herewith to enclose in writing, marked A, I made a reply pretty much in substance like the answer herewith enclosed, marked B, in which I concluded by the proposition to them to send 2 men from each of their districts, 6 persons in number, to accompany their elder brothers, the Chickasaws, when they might return by the way of Arkansas, and see their country and their friends there. I told them I made the offer on the grounds that their great father would approve of it, and purely to oblige them, but that I would not promise anything until it should be sanctioned at Washington. You will see their answer on this head in the paper marked A. I am decidedly of the opinion, from all that I can gather, and I have literally sifted these people, that nothing but the recent change in the chiefs, or rather their pledges to the nation, kept the council from adopting openly and fully and cheerfully and unanimously the propositions submitted. This plan of a government and of civil and political privileges is very agreeable to them, and they think of it with pleasure, yet each feels the possible peril in which a declaration might involve him. They speak much of the failures in the propositions of former times, and doubt the promises made to them. And whilst upon this head Leflore went so far in council, as you may see in the written answer to me, as to say in substance, that if the guarantees were with me from their confidence in my friendship for them, and had not to pass into other hands, the answer might have been different. The way I consider to be fairly open. It will depend wholly upon those who may go with these Indians in search of a country, whether what has been thus favorably commenced be carried to a successful issue, or shall stop short of it. Upon this part of the subject I will have the honor to converse with you more at large on my return, and to give at large, in conversation, my reasons for the belief that the Choctaws, as a people, are even now willing to adopt the offer made to them. The plan of opening the way and fixing depots, with suitable inducements in accommodations in the Indian Territory, and comforts by the way, should be at once adopted, and be made ready against the return of those who go to look at the country. There is no difficulty in regard to the country. Of this I will satisfy you. I shall leave here in the morning early, rain or shine, and lose no time in seeing the other 2 tribes if I can, but certainly the Creeks. I have honor to be, with great respect, etc., signed Thomas L. McKinney. Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 23.
Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs.
Section 24 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 24, Attachment A. Answer of the Choctaw Chiefs to Colonel McKenney, Choctaw Agency, October 17, 1827, by Wa Sha tubbe and other Choctaw Chiefs. Beloved brother, we rejoice to have taken you by the hand, and that the Great Spirit above has given you health and strength to perform a long and tedious road. Our hearts are proud. We have attentively listened to your talk, and after much thinking and consultation, we are sorry we cannot agree to your proposition of yesterday. It was the talk of a friend. We are thankful for your advice, but more than sorry that we have been unanimous in declining to accept it. It always gives us pain to disagree to a friend's talk. We are poor and blind people, and need much advice and indulgence. You gave us much good advice. If you had the power to do everything, and it had not to go into other hands, it might be different. We have confidence in you. We hope to part friends as we met friends. And although we do not agree to your proposition for an exchange of country, we would have no objection if our great father would permit, although not with any view to exchange our country, to let 6 of our people go with our older brothers, the Chickasaws, and return home by the way of the Arkansas. We make this proposal because you suggested it in council. We now wish you a plain and straight path home, and that health and happiness may attend you. Your friends and brothers, Principal Chiefs, Wa Sha tubbe, Holuhbee, Red Dog, David Folsom, Tapena Homma, Greenwood Leflore, Holuhbee, Lula, Mitlokachu, William Hay, Jerh Folsom, Holuhbee, Tubbe, Holuhbee, James Pickens, Chaw, P. Pitchlin, Secretary Pro Tem, M. Foster, Jr., National Secretary, to Colonel T. L. McKenney. End of section 24.
Section 25 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 25, Attachment B. Colonel McKenney's reply to the Choctaw Chiefs, October 17, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. B. Colonel McKenney's reply to the Choctaw Chiefs, Choctaw Agency, October 17, 1827. Friends and brothers, I have received your answer to my talk, declining to accept the conditional arrangement I proposed to enter into with you in council yesterday. I am sorry for it, because it contained the elements of your greatness, and which, if complied with, would have made you at no distant day a great and prosperous people. I do not yet despair of your asking for these privileges. This hope comforts my heart. I told you I had come to counsel with you as men, not as children, and to mark out a path for you, and then leave you to walk in it or take another. Your declining to walk in my path has not changed my feelings towards one of you, but rather increases my anxiety for your happiness. I thank you for the kindness with which you have received me, and for your good wishes as expressed for my safety home over a plain, straight path. Brothers, I cannot but feel troubled for you. I wish you may escape the thickets I think I see you may be entangled in, and the dark mountains in which I tremble to think you must be lost if you do not rise up and look around you. Let my voice keep sounding in your ears. Think of me and of my counsels, and if you do get in trouble, send me word, and if I can, I will help you. Do not fear, we will part friends. I never will forsake you. I am the red man's friend, and shall always be so. Brothers, I have no presents with me, but have put means in the hands of your agent to get a few things for your wives and children. They will be few, but they will be marks of my good will for you, and so I hope you will receive them. Brothers, you spoke in your talk in council about your blood having been mingled with our blood in wars, and of your friendship for the American government. I felt that I know it well, and that is one reason why I want you to be a great people. You desire to be great and to enjoy rewards and honors like our great men. I tell you, I yet have hope. I do not think you will long hold back, but soon, taking my advice, I shall see you smile over your children, rejoicing to think that they are born to the enjoyment of the rights and privileges of our free and happy republic. Brothers, I will ask your great father to let 6 of your people and an interpreter go with your elder brothers, the Chickasaws, and on their way home to visit their friends in Arkansas. I hope he may grant the request. I shake hands with you and pray the Great Spirit to preserve and bless you. Your friend and brother, signed Thomas L. McKenney. To Colonel David Folsom, Colonel Greenwood Leflore, Tapena Homma, and others. End of section 25. Section 26 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 26. Report of Colonel McKenney from Milledgeville, Georgia, November 17, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. Colonel McKenney to the Secretary of War, Milledgeville, Georgia, November 17, 1827. Sir, I am happy in having it in my power to inform you that articles of agreement and cession were, on the morning of the 15th, entered into at the Creek Agency with the Creeks, and which were concluded at the moment of the arrival of the stage, which left me no time to announce it from there, which secure to the United States all the lands owned or claimed by them within the chartered limits of Georgia.
This agreement is signed by the little prince, the head of the nation, and 5 of his principal men, and is to be binding when approved and ratified by the President and Senate on the one hand, and sanctioned on the other by a council of the Creeks, which it is stipulated in the articles shall be immediately convened for the purpose. This sanctioning in council is required by one of their laws. I left the articles with the agent who will attend the council, and superadd the usual certificate in such cases. The agent, having been previously enjoined to prosecute this subject, if possible, to a favorable issue, is joined in the instrument with me. It is due to him that he should be so associated, no less on account of the powers with which I found him vested, than to the zeal with which I discovered he had endeavored to fulfill your instructions in regard to this matter. I have time only to add that the condition money for this land is $42,591. I derive an additional gratification in making this communication from my knowledge of the deep anxiety which you have so long felt to have this controversy settled. I will make you, as soon after my return as possible, a detailed report of my proceedings under this, as also the other branches of your instructions of the 28th of March last and the 10th of April, and submit also views of policy in regard to our Indian relations, especially those of the 4 southern tribes, which have been suggested by a personal inspection of the condition of 3 of them. I have the honor to be very respectfully your obedient servant, Thomas L. McKenney. To the Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 26. Section 27 of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dan McNellan. Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827. By the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Section 27. Report of Colonel McKenney from the Office of Indian Affairs, November 29, 1827, by Thomas L. McKenney. E. From Colonel McKenney to the Secretary of War, Department of War, Office of Indian Affairs, November 29, 1827. I proceed immediately on my return, deferring my general report on the various subjects connected with my recent tour to another period, to submit in brief, as promised in my communication to you from Milledgeville in Georgia of the 17th, the conclusions I have arrived at in regard to the policy which, I respectfully suggest, should prevail in our intercourse with the Indians. I refer especially to that branch of it which embraces the question of emigration and settlement, without the states and territories, and upon lands from which they will never again be requested to remove. These remarks will be confined to the 4 southern tribes generally, but especially to the Creeks. Hitherto, the propositions on this subject, as on most others, have been made and concluded under the form of treaties, and there can be no question but so far as the past is concerned, that mode was the best. It was best because the propositions were never unjust or unreasonable, and because the Indians themselves received them in the spirit in which they were conveyed, free from those intervening and counteracting agencies which have of late years been so industriously employed, and now work so busily and selfishly in governing their decisions, and which seldom fail in fixing these in opposition to the policy of the government, or in the exaction of such terms as are inadmissible. This influence has become paramount among the Creeks, and To it may be attributed in great part, if not wholly, the difficulties which have lain in the way of an earlier settlement of the recent Creek controversy. In proof of this, I have only to remark that it was not until I had met the Creeks in a third council that I could succeed with them, nor then until in their midst I demonstrated the cupidity and bad counsels of one of those interfering agents, and assuming the responsibility, broke him on the spot, by announcing, in the name of the President of the United States, that for the reasons then assigned, no communication of any sort would be received by the President from the Creek Nation if that man had any agency whatever in it. This broke the spell of their opposition, and the agreement was made. I have come to the conclusion, I refer now mainly to the Creeks, and from close and personal observation, that no treaty can be concluded with these people as such, and that whatever may be attempted in this way will be with persons not of the Creek Nation, but such as have artfully insinuated themselves into their confidence, and who govern their counsels. From this may be inferred the ignorance and weakness of the Creeks, and their inference is just. Conscious of their own inefficiency to manage for themselves their concerns, they have yielded to this state of dependence on others. But this is not all. They are a wretched people. Poverty and distress are visible everywhere, and these have become entailed upon them by habitual drunkenness. No man who has the feelings of a man can go through their country and see their total abandonment to this vice without emotions of the most painful kind. I hold their recovery from it, and from its long train of miseries, whilst they retain their present relations to the States, to be hopeless. No human agency can reform them as a people. It is vain to try. They are a devoted people, and destruction lies just before them. Humanity and justice unite in calling loudly upon the government as a parent promptly to interfere and save them. They feel the miseries of their condition, and many of them look most imploringly for help. I believe they would submit cheerfully to be guided by the government in regard to any new relations, which it might be thought proper to establish for them. But those influences, under the direction of which they have placed themselves, would counteract the kindest designs, unless the measures which may be adopted for bettering their condition shall be accompanied by a power that shall cause those interested people to cease their interfering agencies, and this, in my opinion, is within the range of a sound policy, nor will the exercise of it conflict with any of the great principles upon which rest justice or mercy or the freedom of the citizen. It will be found to lie, first, in the preparation of a suitable, and none other should be offered to them, and last home for these unfortunate people, and second, in providing suitable means and support for their transportation, and taking them kindly but firmly by the hand, and telling them they must go and enjoy it. And lastly, in letting those persons who interfere in such matters know that the object of the government being kind to the Indians, and intended wholly to better their condition, its determination is final, and that no persons will be permitted with impunity to interfere in it. To sustain this last position, the presence of a few troops only would be required. I would have it distinctly understood that a reasonable number of reservations should be granted, and that they should be given in fee simple to those who might prefer to remain. This policy applies in its fullest extent to the Creeks. I confine it in this extent to this people, not because it is not in a great degree applicable to others, but because I consider the way to be wide open for the Chickasaws and Choctaws, and therefore no illustrations in reference to them are needed. In regard to these, the Chickasaws and Choctaws, I believe it will only be required to make the provision, and as has been more fully explained in my reports of the 10th and 17th of October, marked A, B, and C, and they will go. I believe also the greater portion of the Cherokees would follow, and upon a bare exposition of the plan which has been recommended, the establishment of a suitable system for their transportation, and an invitation to them to go and join their brothers. I did not, as you are aware, visit the Cherokees. It was my wish to have seen them, and in pursuance of your instructions made known the views and wishes of the government to them also. My time, I found, would not hold out, and if it had been longer, I must have arrived in their country at the period when the commissioners were engaged in negotiating for the privilege of uniting by means of a canal through their country the waters of Canasego and Hiwassee, and I should have deemed it prudent, even with time enough to have visited them, not to distract their counsels by calling off their attention to any other subject. Of the Cherokees, it is due that I should speak from my knowledge, obtained, however, otherwise than by personal observation in terms of high commendation. They have done much for themselves. It has been their good fortune to have had born among them some great men. Of these, the late Charles Hicks stood preeminent. Under his wisdom, which was guided by virtues of a rare quality, these people have been elevated in privileges of every local description, high above their neighbors. They seek to be a people, and to maintain by law and good government those principles which remain the security of persons, defend the rights of property, etc. They deserve to be respected and to be helped, but with the kindness regards to them, and with a firm conviction in the propriety and truth of the remark, they ought not to be encouraged in forming a constitution and government within a state of the republic to exist and operate independently of our laws. The sooner they have the assurance given them that this cannot be permitted, the better it will be for them. If they will agree to come at once under our laws and be merged as citizens in our privileges, would it be objected against? But if they will not, then no people of all the Indians within our limits are better qualified to go into a territory such as it is proposed to provide for our Indians, and by their superior lights confer, under a suitable form of government, benefits upon the Indian race. They are wise enough, I think, to see this, and magnanimous enough to undertake it. For my own part, I am solicitous for their happiness and prosperity, and being conscious that their hopes must rest ultimately upon such a home as the Chickasaws have, with such a display of wisdom, determined to go and provide for themselves. I cannot but believe that a great majority of the Cherokees will consent to join them. In conclusion, I respectfully suggest that a suitable provision be made by the Congress to be placed at the disposition of the Executive, first, for defraying the expense of the Chickasaws, who have agreed to go and look for a country, and with a view to its occupancy upon the terms which they have stipulated, and as will be seen on referring to my report of the 10th of October, marked B, herewith submitted, and of the 6 Choctaws who are, by the assent of their nation, to go with them. This I had estimated at $10,000, but this estimate was confined to the Chickasaws. I would suggest that $5,000 more be added, making $15,000 for this object. To this may be added, for the present, $100,000 to be made applicable in the discretion of the executive to the object of Indian emigration generally. It will be time enough after the country is chosen to provide the means to extinguish the title or titles of the present occupants, and for other objects connected with the plan of settling it, etc., as proposed. Various illustrations might be added, confirming, in my view of it, the importance of the policy which I have only glanced at, and these should have been added but for want of time. Enough, only I find to be left for me to run out this meager outline, which is respectfully submitted for your better judgment, and if it be your pleasure, to the wisdom of Congress. I have the honor to be, with great respect, your obedient servant, Thomas L. McKinney. To the Honorable James Barber, Secretary of War. End of section 27.
End of Annual Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, December 1827, by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs.